We move on into our first panel of the evening on NextGen Digital MSMEs, harnessing digital power to overcome challenges and scale. This discussion will focus on how technology is enabling MSMEs to rise above barriers and seize new opportunities. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panel members, Ms. Nipa Dutta, CEO, India Fintech Forum, as a moderator. Let's have a huge round of applause. Mr. Ashit Bogani, SVP, AU Small Finance Bank. Mr. Sunil Kamat, EVP at Axis Bank. Mr. Ravi Kant Aurora, SVP at Gokwik. Mr. Vikram Pandya, Head of Research at Vanium Capital. And Mr. Amit Kumar, Director and CTO at EaseBus. Let's have a huge round of applause. And I would request the moderator to kindly begin the session.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible. Big shoes to fill just after Mr. Ranjan's speech, but I'll start off briefly with some trends that I started looking at today and in a couple of reports. When you're looking at MSME, especially in the context of India's growth, three things are coming up in every report, both national and internationally. One is the whole aspect of innovation and adaptation to new technologies. The second is the whole multiplicity of MSMEs, when it is an engine for generating income. And the third is, of course, the inclusion, which again becomes very important in India's context. So with that, with that in mind, let's spend some time on talking about how this particular sector, which is responsible for 37%, as Rohit mentioned, of India's GDP, inching towards merely half of India's export, and employs close to, now almost to 30 crore folks. Let's talk about how this industry can get to the next stage of digitization and how do we get to next-gen MSMEs. I'll start my first question with Sunil. We'll start with the banks first. I'll sorry, with Ashit. The whole concept of MSME had started, had just got to a next level with this year's union budget, last year's union budget, when we had the whole new classification for MSMEs, as well as all the additional measures that was helping the MSMEs in terms of credit, access to credit, discounts, collaterals. But obviously, both the banks and the fintechs and the entire ecosystem has a role to play. So with that, the first question to you is how, along with everything that is favorable to the current MSMEs, the banks customizing and the products to reach out to the MSMEs. How are you reaching out, in addition to everything that we are seeing on the regulations?
Sure, thank you. Am I audible? Yeah. So first, ma'am, you spoke about the change in the definition, right, of MSME. So I think it was a great initiative to untangle the MSMEs from a lot of compliances. By changing the definitions, they were able to broaden the scope and include more MSMEs under the definition. And that also made a lot of them eligible for so many government schemes, right? So as banks, if I have to talk about, and let me first segregate the MSMEs into micro, small, medium. So if you look at the overall MSME base, it is close to 6.5 crores MSMEs which are registered. and of which 98% are falling within the definition of micro to small, right? So that's a huge, huge number. And that number is not just huge, but it is also widely scattered and widely spread, right? So at bank, we have one advantage is we have both human as well as tech. So we try to serve the MSMEs with both the means, and basis our large network of branches, large network of feet on street that we have, we are able to touch base and we are able to bring these innovations to MSMEs. So for example, if I talk about the micro and small MSMEs, which is a larger chunk, now if they are smaller traders or there are smaller customer facing entities which are directly into B2C business, their needs sometimes on the payment side are very, very limited. And what they need is a QR, they need a sound box, they need a POS machine, right? It is the banks which are able to, through their networks, are able to take this to the end customer. Second is, these MSMEs, when they collect these payments from their customers, now it also creates a digital footprint, as Rakesh sir also pointed out, and that enables the bank to churn that data. And today, for example, at AU, we do a lot of cash flow based funding. So earlier, it was mandatory for customers to provide ITR, to provide a lot of documents. But today, with GST account aggregator and the cash flow based analytics, we are able to do a lot of funding to these MSMEs. The third is a lot of government schemes like CGT, MSC, Mudra, etc., which government has rolled out. So we try and become instrumental in terms of taking this to the last mile. And apart from that, for example, EaseBus is doing a great job in terms of digitizing the MSMEs. And today, if you look at a changing trend in terms of the customer's behavior, all of us has to some extent, and I would say to a large extent, become lazy. Right? We need everything at our doorstep. Earlier, we used to go out and shop. Now we want things to be delivered at our home. Same way, whether it is booking of a cab or a movie ticket, we try to do it through our phones, right? So that is where players like EaseBus, payment gateway services make it a lot more convenient. So when banks and such partners come together, we are able to offer huge value add to the merchants and who are able to take their businesses to the and scale it up to a large extent.
Great. Thank you for that. Moving on to Ravi, because you guys work very closely with the enablement of the MSMEs on scaling up. So what are some of the challenges that we see this sector in terms of when they're scaling up, and what are some of the solutions?
So I'll reiterate the things because Rakesh has already mentioned the challenges which are there for the MSMEs. So few of them, like one of the major one is discoverability. So MSME actually faces the problem, the challenge of discoverability to a large audience. They struggle to reach to their targeted audience. That is, I think, so one of the major challenge. Second is for them is related to building up a customer trust and reliability on the products. They are new. They come to such a online portals and online access, but the trust factor of a customer is not there at that point of time. That is, I think, so the next challenge which they see. Third one, majorly, they know the tools are there, but they implement those tools in a piecemeal way because of the constraints. That actually sometimes build inefficiencies in their business. Last one, of course, is the working capital constraint which MSME faces. That is the point, I think. So they are not even able to implement the new tools, the digital tools which are there, which actually take them back to the traditional way or a less scalable way. I think so. That is the major things which MSME faces the challenge and struggle on those aspects.
Thank you. I think we got to hear about what are some of the products that we are catering to MSMEs. What are the challenges that that the MSMEs still face, even availing some of these products. But I think what you mentioned it as your last point, the working capital, is something that I will focus my next question to Vikram. That's your forte. So when you are investing in an MSME, and how do you differentiate between MSMEs, as they're scaling up, and how do you ensure that this whole engine which drives the MSMEs, that stays and they are, well funded?
A good question. So when we talk about any MSME, right? So we need to understand that growth that they are getting, what kind of a growth they are getting, is it a quality growth rather than just a quantity? Because you are looking at something which is going to stay and then you can fund that, right? Because funding is a business which is more about collection than the delivery, right? So now when we talk about any sort of business, typically these are small companies and individuals who are working, right? And typically their initial investment is higher and then it is going to work with a working capital requirement typically. So what people should look at in general is how you can have a scenario where you can have that initial funding given to them. There are grants available, credit guarantee schemes available, multiple things are there. And along with that, is there a better way of identifying that once they are, or let's say as they go digital, can you do cash flow based lending? Can you identify the amount which is something which you can have cash flow lien, right? So you have RBF funding. So can you have something which is easier on them as well as easier to recover and have a risk mitigation in place? That is the major point that I would like to raise. And apart from that, I think with the new technology which always comes in, whether it is generative AI, whether we talk about automation in general, so I think the good part that I have seen recently is that government has started doing this capacity building initiatives. And as a part of that, you have those tools which are available by government given to this companies and people can use them at zero cost, few cost, or let's say very less cost, right? So the idea here is to allow this MSMEs as a part of association when they represent themselves, right? It becomes much more easier to collectively get that benefit rather than individually. And when we talk about financing also, the right set of companies getting the finances good for the economy rather than everyone getting finance, right? So that is where I think the bifurcation lies. Over to you.
Thank you. So I think the access, overall access, then the awareness of how to get that access and optimizing the working capital are the 3 points that we kind of,
Correct. And that's why I said that end use based,
Yep.
if you can give that credit, right? It mitigates the risk and goes to the right channel and right end use. That is what we are talking about.
Right. Over to you, Amit. Rohit just mentioned about that you guys got the PA license earlier today, so congratulations to Isbaz on that. But would you want to kind of highlight on how, in general, fintechs can enable a seamless customer experience, and how does the whole role of a PA helps out in ensuring that the end-to-end customer experience as well as the payment rails are in place?
Yeah, so as we are aware, large part of MSMEs, like 60 million of them, are now in the part of their digitization journey, right? So where there are different approaches what they are taking while they are getting digitized. So basically, and the growth is only can happen when they are focusing on their core business, right? Where all these subsidiary like Rakesh sir mentioned, that they need to automate their business operation, right? Where they can do this effectively and then they can focus on their core business and scale fast. And that's what we kind of focus upon, where we orchestrate all of these full stack financial operation journey on our platform so that they handle all of these complex operations, not just payments, the financial operation, the banking operation sitting behind it, embedded into their ecosystem. So that's something which comes as a bundle and help them across. So seamlessness, a seamless experience, as in multiple aspects, right? Whether it's the customer experience, where if we talk about payments, customer experience gets multifold enhanced when it's embedded, UPI plugins. Now it's in-app payments which is happening. There's no redirection which is happening. So no redirection. The trust factor is high, where the customer who is dealing with a brand only deals with that brand without any redirection to the third-party entity, right? So that increases the convergence, right? That increases their experiences. So that's where we look at, and of course, this seamless also helps them in their operation and scalability, right? Where, like suppose, even the case of Gokwik, or there are many banks who work with us. Now imagine like all of these onboardings which we are doing on behalf of them. Suppose this is a batch of 50 merchants, onboarding which we have received. Now, if you can imagine the kind of operation which is behind, where, if a customer has missed out some of the documents, getting this information circulated across two, between several teams inside this company, several teams inside that company, and then getting it sorted, right? So we have done this seamless integration with many entities, with banks as well, where they see the single source of truth, right? Where my operation team, underwriting team, whatever feedbacks or the findings, observation they have, they put it in the same CRM, and the same view is getting published to the same the other entity, right? Whether it's a bank, which has brought in the customer. So the seamless embedding or integration is very much important, where this can lead to the scalability. And the last part is embedded finance, where this seamless integration, where we are focused in building a plug-and-play API journey. We are API first company. We want to enable every businesses with the capability so that they become fintech themselves and operate at a scale where, where they do not have to worry about the reliability, the compliances, the fraud. All of these things gets handled in the same API, right? So that's what we see, that this is, of course, a transformational, in nature, if not revolutionary. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think it's about the entire ecosystem and almost playing multiple roles to enable the MSMEs getting to the next stage. So I will now focus my attention again to the banker, to Sunil. Big part of MSME is about inclusion. So how do we ensure that in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, the MSMEs are enabled with the right tools and technologies to scale up to the next level?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Firstly, thanks to EaseBus team. We truly value this relationship. On your question, I would say, I think we have a lot of digital tool, but I think the bigger question for a lot of MSME is the trust factor, right? So how do you bring in the digital trust partnership is really the key. And I think from a banking standpoint, across all banks, not just to Axis, there are a lot of initiatives that has been taken. It starts with the entire onboarding, right? How do you really simplify the onboarding? There are a lot of tools that are available. We are leveraging on a lot of APIs today that are available in terms of ensuring that the digital journey itself is completely seamless. The second part is all related to account opening in terms of the charges. How do you make sure that there's complete transparency in terms of charges which the bankers try to put on the MSMEs, because this is also another big headache to say, okay, while I open the account with you, your charges are quite high. So what can we do? The experience, it's all about delivering an experience and not just the product. So the customer is buying an experience, and therefore how do you really help them in their transaction journey becomes equally important. So that is another aspect which the banks have solved for. I think the most important part is access to credit, right? So how do you really give access to credit is something that we have solved, and there are a couple of use cases. I'll just touch upon 2 use cases. If you look at Unilever, FMCG, for example, you take Unilever or ITC, they have their entire ecosystem of dealer, distributor, and shopkeepers, right? They have created their own marketplace. At banks, what we are trying to do is, rather than trying to create our own separate ecosystem, we are partnering with these organizations where banks are able to, plug into their marketplace. They have their own app, like Unnati for ITC, for example, or Shikhar for Unilever. We are integrating with their apps, to make sure that access to credit is already available. So that becomes an easy kill rather than trying to onboard separately and looking at their own credit worthiness. We are trying to make sure that we are integrating into their app, and we can see a number of use cases, not just for FMCG. I think the second use case is related to partnership. I think along with easeBuzz, we see other partners like Zoho and Tally who are very well integrated, with the MSMEs. So how do you really partner them to make sure that access to banking is made available? And there are a lot of use cases and ways and means in which, you can really partner and deliver a good, experience to the customer. So these are some of the means in which we have really looked at complementing, whether it is a fintech or with a corporate, to make sure that we are giving them the reach and the visibility from a banking standpoint.
So I think the use cases were really helpful, and I think what is really great to know that banks actually are going downstreams. Usually, myself being a banker, we are kind of used to be in a silo and not very flexible, but banks going downstreams and integrating with the bigger corporates, I think that's really kind of will open up a whole pathway into the next generation of MSMEs. So shifting gears a little bit, and I will just twist one popular statement that we have all watched in a movie. The statement is, with great power comes great responsibility. But I would say with greater reach also comes great responsibility. And so on that aspect, as we are reaching out to a broader audience, sometimes some of them not having the right tools and technologies, how do you ensure that the MSMEs, the MSMEs should ensure, but also the providers are ensuring that they are having the right level of compliance in place, and how do they protect themselves from cybersecurity attacks?
I think cybersecurity is a big challenge. If you just look at the numbers, 2024 data talks about the cyber frauds, right, was a whopping $2.7 billion. That we are talking about roughly 22,000 crores only in terms of fraud that has happened. And that is a big number, and the estimates are, it's going to just increase manifold, right? If I just look at the data which is available, in the NCRP and some of the estimates that they're talking about 2030, they are looking at cyber crime and frauds, right? The money that is involved will touch almost like 1.2 lakh crores. That's almost like close to 1% of the GDP.
Yeah.
Right, and that is a problem. So from a banking standpoint, again, of course, there is always knowledge sharing and various things that we are trying to do. But some of the things that the banks are doing, one is on the velocity checks, right? We are in the world of real-time payments. Once the money is out, it really becomes difficult, it's water under the bridge, right? You're not able to then retrieve. So how do you really address the problem upfront? So there are tools that are available to make sure that depending on the past data, how do you really validate a particular transactions? How do you bring in the pre-checks into play to make sure that, whether we talk about penny drop testing that are available to understand who the beneficiaries are. And you can do that, using APIs and technology which are available. So that is one case. Second, bringing in larger risk framework in terms of, logins. Today, if you look at many banks, the credentials of the maker, user, or the signatories are separate. What goes into core banking on the Finacle side, for example, what gets stored is very different to what gets stored on the corporate internet banking platform, right? So some of the banks have now taken a conscious call that there is a proper mirroring in terms of what is there in the core banking as to what is available on the corporate internet banking platform. The OTP at the login, it's not the username and password that is getting used. Even the OTP at the time of login is something that has been put forward to. So these are some of the credentials that are being used to make sure that, I mean, the topic is large, but I'm just restricting it to some use cases which the bank has really used it to make sure. So velocity checks, ensuring that the mirroring between corporate banking and core banking are there, and some of the tools that are available using APIs for validation is something which we have done to make sure the pre-checks are in place, and we can bring down the cybercrime along with education and some of the stuff that we have done from an integration standpoint.
Thank you. And I think where you mentioned about velocity, and we see a typical problem of layering that happens on the MSME side, and that's where a lot of checks and balances are being put in, because that is one of the sources of fraud also. I mean, we can spend a whole evening here talking about that, but I think we got a good glimpse of what are the basic checks. Amit, you wanted to add, and the reason I kind of directing is because I was judging some of the, for the awards, some of the innovations, and there are some very compelling use cases where people are, one of the participants were talking about they are enabling QRs across the rural population through cooperatives and banks, cooperative banks as well. And obviously the question comes is, how do you handle fraud management? And a very simple answer is EaseBuzz takes care of that. So I think along with the banks, the fintechs also kind of plays a very important role to ensure that whole environment.
Yeah, so with the interest of time, I'll keep it short. Yeah, so while banks are very, particular about taking, managing the risk, managing deposits and all the prudential risk around it, while fintechs have the responsibility to innovate and, bring in the operability and the, kind of technology, bringing technology leverage and bringing something digitized and automate. So while we are doing this, we also have a responsibility, in taking care of all the risk and compliances behind. So at EaseBuzz, we put compliance at first, where all of those APIs or the journeys which we offer to our set of customers, it comes with inbuilt fraud risk management system. Whether it's a transaction or it's a validation of a vendor behind, like, we really, kind of go behind. We kind of, as Rakesh sir mentioned, the data is the larger, kind of a leverage you can take there. So we kind of capture a timestamp, and we kind of have a lot of algorithms built in behind, which which helps us track any fraudulent or suspicious activity. While this is also a part of it, but the vertical SaaS which we are building on top of it, right? That also gives us a leverage to understand that particular domain better. Like Rohit mentioned, we focus on different domains, and and we solve their larger problems. So that also helps us, in helping these businesses to handle not just compliances and the risk, also handle some kind of operational effectiveness, right, which we can bring to that industry. Probably they are not aware of that can be unlocked earlier, right? So we also kind of get inside and then bring in these kind of value creations for them, and that's why we are, maintaining the profitability and able to create value around. Yeah,
So,
thanks.
yeah, I think we can all be assured that MSMEs are in good hands in terms of both fintechs and banks. And, they obviously, the awareness needs to be there, but there are checks and balances in place. Vikram, I mean, we talked about investments and access and working capital, but are there any other ways that, investors can help MSMEs scale up in terms of their operability or,
So when we talk
digitization?
about the capital side, right? So you have, as I mentioned, right, working capital requirement and the initial part that you require. But when we talk about the typical venture capital journey that we look at, right, from the startup perspective, most of that does not apply to this MSME, because while they are, let's say, really good engine to drive, some of them only can fit into the structure that we have, right, from the VC perspective. So for them, the right way is to always work with someone who can work with that ecosystem at a local level, and also at a level where you have either, let's say, either a technology play, so they can identify, as I mentioned, and use, and then figure out this is how it can be. But what investors can do in general is that fund those primary engines rather than secondary engines where those MSMEs are there, right? So for example, let's say startup like Navdan or MetaFin where we have invested, right? So those are the startups which try to make sure that you are making them more productive, the MSMEs which are there on the ground. So let's say you are removing their diesel generators and you are putting solar, right? So that is the power that you can give or empowerment that you can give so that they are reducing their cost, making it more sustainable as a business and while still driving that growth. So investors can fuel the primary growth engines along with the banks, of course. And then the secondary growth engines, which are MSMEs in that sense, can get at the grassroots level this help required based on their own use cases. So nobody can solve everything together at one go, but maybe in piecemeal basis, we can figure that out. And also the great synergies that we have seen so far that banks work with fintech, right? So it is a packaged banking as I call it, right? So you have this packaged banking where when you get a bank account, you also get, let's say, compliance package, which you can use. You also get, let's say, the reporting requirement, whatever you might have, or let's say even whether it is your accounting that you are managing, bill discounting that you are doing, whatever it might be. I'm saying that that packaged banking that people are able to get with the partnership, like let's say Easebuzz or someone with the bank, you are suddenly able to look at the embedded finance in a very specific manner, right? And that gives you further opportunity to ensure that this startups who otherwise can't afford it, right, can, or startup or MSMEs who can't afford it, can suddenly get access to this new tools and technology because it is packaged as a part of account. So banking as a service, when we talk about that, that banking as a service suddenly can get more value-added activities embedded as a part of it, and then that also can help. So investor can fund companies like Isbuzz, and then it can work with the banks and then provide that service.
So where VCs cannot reach, find a right partner is the overall messaging. So we are running out of time, so I will just have one last question to my banker friend, Ashit. So we kept on the recurring theme on trust. So any last thoughts on how do we ensure that trust factor is there, and that is there across all the stakeholders, and get more and more MSMEs to come on the digital platform and avail the tools and technologies that the banks and fintechs are catering them for.
Sure. So, see, typically, if I talk about banking, banking itself is a business of trust, right? If you don't have trust, you don't bank with that particular entity. So it is at the core of any financial, be it fintech, be it bank, customer will choose you only if they trust you, right? Now, within that, what solutions they are going to use those solutions? For example, we hear about a lot of frauds these days. So customers sometimes are skeptical about using the digital modes. Right, and that's where our role comes into picture, where we create a lot of awareness, we build a lot of safeguards, right? Like you talked about the transaction monitoring piece, right? So any abnormal transactions that we see, even from our customers' account, we try and raise an alarm, and we take necessary steps to see to it that there is no fraud happening with our customers also. At the onboarding stage also, we put a lot of guardrails to ensure that no mule or no wrong kind of an account gets into our system. And that eventually leads to a lot of trust, right? At the same time, on the customer side, a lot of awareness programs are being run by the bank. We do a lot of activities in terms of, along with the associations, industry bodies, etc., and tell them about the do's and don'ts and the right ways of dealing on the digital landscape. Right? It's like if you leave your locker key open, then somebody is definitely going to misuse it, right? So how do you keep your digital money or your digital platform safer is all about awareness, and I think we keep on doing it. Fraudsters also keep innovating. So we also have to continuously be on vigil, and we keep, we keep doing different things in terms of both awareness as well as building the controls at our end.
Thank you for that. And I think with that, we will be ending this session today. Thank you all the panelists, for their, invaluable inputs.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
think we all learned about some of the scopes, some of the challenges, and reiterating the importance of innovation, automation, data, compliance for the MSME sectors. And hopefully, I mean, over the last 3 years, we have almost seen the sector going 3 to 4 folds, and we will see that momentum, and maybe they will be the main driving engine for the new age India as well. So with that, thank you, everybody.